This week on the Hollywood and Toto podcast, the Daily Wire goes there with its newest movie and what it means for the conservative movement in total. We mourn some comments from a rap pioneer that speak to how much cancel culture has impacted just about everyone, even the people who would say just about anything back in the day. And we give our 2 cents on Deadpool and Wolverine. It's the biggest movie of the summer, probably the year, and why specifically it doesn't disappoint and why it isn't woke, even though the word woke is mentioned in the movie.
Welcome to the Hollywood and Toto podcast. Entertainment news and reviews without the woke Hollywood narrative. Free speech, free expression. Now that's entertainment. And here's your host, award-winning film critic, Christian Toto.
Before we jump in, I hope you'll subscribe to the Hollywood and Toto podcast, now on YouTube, Rumble, and of course, iTunes or your favorite podcast provider. Give us a like, give us a share, do all the things to help spread the word about the show. Well, I've been holding a little bit of a secret for a while now. I knew the Daily Wire was working on something big, something interesting, something that couldn't be shared right away, and something that would really rev up the culture wars anew. Kind of like what they did with What is a Woman, that documentary from 2022. But I didn't know anything more about it. I just had this sort of tease, this little sliver of information. I knew the news would be dropping pretty soon, and it just dropped. The new film is a documentary of sorts, maybe a docudrama, maybe a little more accurate. I don't even know how to perfectly describe it, but it's called Am I Racist? And it stars, once again, Matt Walsh. Here's a sneak peek.
If I'm going to sort this out, I need to go deeper undercover. If I want to be an ally, I need to look like one.
What is racism?
Martin Luther King said not to judge people by the...
Martin Luther King said a lot of stuff.
Yeah, the Daily Wire is just going exactly where it should go, into uncomfortable situations, into the heart of the culture wars, into a subject that everyone wants to talk about, but often we all feel afraid to. Racism, identity politics, and of course DEI, which is really at the heart and the soul of what's going on in the culture right now, and specifically what this movie is attacking. I've called it an anti-racist movie. Feels pretty accurate. So what does it mean? Well, let's start with the beginning. Matt Walsh is an odd duck. He's a very strict and devout Christian, and yet he works well on the screen. You know, we saw that with What is a Woman, because his quiet, deadpan delivery is often perfect when you're really exploring these combustible subjects. I mean, you know, someone who's more charismatic in a traditional sense, maybe it doesn't work, but it worked perfectly in What is a Woman and how we explore that terrain. Well,
some women have penises, right? Some men have vaginas.
I like scented candles, and I've watched Sex and the City.
Yeah.
How do I know if I'm a woman?
That's a great question.
Well, he's back and he's doing it again. And of course, he's going quasi undercover. I guess it's a good thing his face is not so recognizable at this point. He's able to trick a few people. That may not last for long. So there's that. The other critical element here is that this isn't a Daily Wire Plus production in the traditional sense, meaning you can see it in a theater. The film is coming out September 13th in theaters nationwide. How many? Enough, I'm sure. Otherwise, it wouldn't have gone in this direction. But this is a new step for the Daily Wire. A lot of their stuff, or almost everything, has been behind the paywall. You have to be a subscriber. And for even those like myself who have been really applauding what the Daily Wire has been doing over the last few years, and full disclosure, I am a contributor there, but not a full-timer. What does it matter if it's preaching to the choir? What if the average person who might be impacted by some of the stories, the jokes, the language, the documentaries, they can't see it because they're not subscribing to the Daily Wire. If you have a sane left-of-center friend, chances are he or she is not a subscriber, so they can't access it. Well, now they can, starting again September 13th. And that will be interesting. Now, another point to mention is, will other conservative media outlets cover this story? I've seen a few mainstream outlets cover it, and so far fairly, which to their credit, I didn't expect that. What about other places? The Federalist, the Daily Caller, Breitbart News, are they going to be reporting on this film? Seems like a big deal. Seems like a really important part of the right's efforts to infiltrate pop culture. Shouldn't they be reporting on it? I've been very critical in this arena about other platforms on the right not supporting, not promoting, not reporting on these situations. It's been a problem for sure. And I'll give some credit to The Blaze. Again, I'm a contributor there as well, but they've been pushing in this direction where they will give some exposure to projects that are made outside of their ecosystem. That does matter. But of course, the bigger issue here is how many people will see it and what impact it'll have on the culture. Now, the trailer is just absolutely explosive. And I don't think I showed this in the clip, but Robin DiAngelo, who's the author of White Fragility, she's one of the kingpins of the DEI movement, and she also happens to be white. She's in this movie, and he apparently tricked her into being interviewed on camera.
Hi. And what's your name?
I'm Matt.
Matt. Hi,
Yeah.
Matt.
Nice to meet you.
Just had to ask who you are because you have to be careful.
I guarantee that's the closer of the film. It's got to be, just because he's just an influential figure and it's magic. I can't imagine what's going to be shared in that conversation. But, this is the kind of thing that can move the needle on the culture. And we've seen in recent months, maybe the fallout from What is a Woman, where more people are questioning some of the trans ideology when it comes to sports, when it comes to what's being taught in schools. So you're seeing things change. Years ago, An Inconvenient Truth from Al Gore talked about climate change. And no matter where you stand on the issue, that movie impacted the conversation, the national conversation. We were talking about it in different ways. We were exploring it. We were sharing it. We were arguing about it. It really did have an impact. And that's odd because most documentaries try to have that result, but they don't always get there. It's the rare film that really does rock the culture in a profound way. And Inconvenient Truth did it for sure. I think in a way supersized me by now the late Morgan Spurlock. There have been some documentaries about SeaWorld and treatment of animals. Again, that's had an impact. Will this one have it? Is Am I Racist going to be rocking the culture anew? I think it will be. It'll also be fascinating to see how the mainstream media covers it. Now, in the past, a lot of right-leaning films have either been slammed by critics or just completely ignored. I didn't see that movie. I'm not aware of it. So that'll be fascinating to watch as well. But you know what? Things can't be contained any longer. We've got this internet thing. We've got Elon Musk and X. And even if the mainstream media covers up these stories and doesn't really give them the attention they deserve, well, along comes a few posts, a few tweets, a few messages, and all of a sudden everybody knows about it. So there's that. So I can't wait to see Am I Racist? I think What is a Woman is a very hard act to follow. I am glad that it's out there. And we're going to keep an eye on this film as the months roll along and as the release date draws near. So I have a feeling there may be some pressure put on this production, if not the production itself, maybe even the theaters, the chains that are showing this presentation. Will they be forced into shelving it? Will they be told you can't put out a movie like this? It's too problematic. It's not beyond the realm of possibility. And one final note, the movie's coming out in September. What's happening in September? Well, the presidential race will be heating up significantly. While President Biden hasn't been overtly woke, his policies sure have been. And Kamala Harris, who is now the probable candidate for the Democrats, she's been more aggressively woke. She's been more in your face. She's been embracing it in the public arena in a way that most candidates don't. So having this in the conversation will be fascinating. Will President Trump screen it at Mar-a-Lago? Will he throw his support behind the movie? Could be a game changer. Will there be a war on the presidential front about the politics behind this movie, about DEI? Again, fascinating. But isn't that what pop culture is all about? Isn't that what production companies like the Daily Wire should be doing? Can't wait to see and talk about Am I Racist? I think the fun has just begun. Sometimes a song isn't just a song. It enters into the lexicon in a way. And Public Enemy's Fight the Power, I think, qualifies in that category. It's not just a rap lyric. It's not just an anthem. It's not just a raised fist against the system. It's a phrase that we use all the time, fight the power. And yes, we may have used it beforehand, but it took on a new and more significant meaning after that song came out. And so it's so sad to see Chuck D, the person who rapped those lyrics, share his thoughts on cancel culture, free speech, and speaking out, aka fighting the power in 2024. He recently gave an interview to Rolling Stone. I think their Australian division. Didn't even know there was such a thing, but there you go. And they were talking about cancel culture and artists speaking out for different causes. And I want to read exactly what he said about the situation and about why people, specifically musicians and artists like him, they don't say that much these days, or they don't say the inappropriate things or the controversial things or the things that buck the system or buck the narrative. Here's what he said. They're all scared, man. Musicians, artists, entertainers have now been governed by fear of being canceled. In my case, I'm like, I don't know who's orchestrated this all. All I know is that it's madness. Now, like I said at HollywoodInToto.com, he's either being disingenuous or he just doesn't get it. I mean, this is of the left. The left created cancel culture. The left enforces cancel culture. Yeah, there are some people who are on the right and getting increasingly woke, and that's an issue and that's a problem. But this is a left of center situation, full stop. How he not know that, I don't know. But, that it does matter. But what also matters is that he seems to be afraid to speak himself. Like, it isn't just his fellow artists who are worried about getting canceled. It sounds like Chuck D is too. Now, Chuck D is a music legend. I'm going to hope he's got enough money in the bank to survive any kind of cancellation. And also his entire brand was being a rebel, an outlaw, of saying things that people weren't saying but needed to be said. And you don't have to agree or disagree with what Public Enemy had to say back in the day. That's who they were. That's who he is. And the fact that he has this fear, that he's self-censoring, is pretty scary. But I think the scarier part is that, well, two things. One, he's not alone. There are many, many artists who are self-censoring, but also other pioneers in speech have been just either quiet or just absolutely hypocritical. We don't have to dial back the Wayback Machine to remember Neil Young and how he was attacking Joe Rogan during the pandemic. You've got to get him off the air, he told Spotify. It's either him or me. He's sharing disinformation. Well, one thing is, a lot of what Rogan said wasn't disinformation. It was actually accurate. If you're a 20-something healthy male or female, do you really need that vaccine? No, you didn't. Also, he took some medications. He took a cocktail of medications when he contracted COVID-19. And a couple of days later, he was perfectly fine. Does that make him a monster? Does that mean he took horse paste, as they called ivermectin at the time? No. But Neil Young, Mr. Free Speech, a guy who actually performed on a freedom of speech tour 15 or so years ago, wanted to shut him down. The old hippie from the 60s somehow forgot the values that got him here. What a shame. But he's not alone. It's not just him. It's not just Chuck D. It's also Howard Stern. Oh, Howard Stern. I grew up on Howard Stern. I loved Howard Stern. Yes, you can judge me for that, but I just don't care. It was irreverent. It was fresh. It was out of the ordinary. It was everything. He was a pioneer. He was a rebel. He was a bad boy. He said the things that we thought but couldn't say out loud. He changed radio. I can go on and on. And who is Howard Stern today? Well, Howard Stern is such a corporate entity that the Biden administration thought, well, we can put the doddering old man who's leading the country in his studio and nothing bad will happen. He won't be pressured. He won't be questioned in a way that's appropriate and tough. He'll be thrown softball after softball. That's what they turned to in Howard Stern. What a shame. Howard Stern is virtually silent on the free speech wars going on right now, on the censorship battles we're facing, on the fact that comedians can't always say what they want to say. The man you think would be at the forefront of this movement has been cowed either by money or time or an inability or unwillingness to fight the battles he once fought. It's a terrible situation. So to hear Chuck D, to hear Neil Young, to hear Howard Stern go back on their values, not fight the power, not speak out for free speech, not try to cancel culture is a terrible thing. But if each of them rose up and tried to smite cancel culture, it might inspire others to do the same. It might give us a collective sense of boldness in this subject matter. And cancel culture could go away overnight if enough artists spoke out against it. But they are not, and they don't. And cancel culture, while weakening, is still here. What a shame. We really need someone to fight the power. And right now, it ain't Chuck D. You know, we don't do a lot of movie reviews at the Hollywood in Toto podcast. I save most of them for HollywoodInToto.com. And yes, that is a plug. And no, I'm not ashamed. But I thought I'd make an exception because the biggest movie this summer just arrived, and it's probably going to be the biggest movie of the year, I think, just based on the initial reaction and based on my sense of how it's going to please Comic-Con Nation, which essentially is everyone in the country these days. I remember when as a kid, I used to order comic books in the mail because I was so ashamed that my friends would think I'm a geek, a nerd, a dork for reading comic books. And then today, you're actually exiled if you don't even read comic books or you don't watch all the new superhero movies. So times have changed mostly for the better, but Deadpool and Wolverine is going to be huge at the box office and in a lot of people's hearts and minds. Let me share mine. The movie is pretty much what you expect. It is irreverent. It is R-rated. It is very, very funny. And all the times that Ryan Reynolds, the star, has broken the fourth wall and made these quips about himself, about Marvel, about superhero movies, about everything going on in Hollywood, well, he doubled and tripled down in the movie. And it is very, very funny. It is honest. It is frank. Let me tell you, I met Ryan Reynolds years ago. He was doing promotion for the In-Laws movie, maybe 20, 22 years ago, just as he was starting out. So funny, so natural, so quick, so glib. And really, Deadpool is Ryan Reynolds at this point, although I'm sure he calms it down in polite company. It's just his persona. It's his brand. It's why this works so well. And it does again.
I know I turn everything into a joke, but I care. Or I want to use that for something important. I waited a long time for this team up.
Now you add Wolverine, who is stern and severe and just a broken spirit in many ways, of course, beautifully played by Hugh Jackman. It's oil and water, and yet it works. It mixes together. They're a great comic team. This is a very, very funny film. We don't get a lot of great comedies in theaters these days. You know why. It's cancel culture for sure. That's part of it. But this, you're going to laugh. You're going to laugh a lot. Now, it helps to be a bit geeky. You want to know some of the references. I'm sure some flew right past my head, but I got enough of them to know that this is a very, very enjoyable film that's smart. It's on the kind of on the inside. And also, it really does love the fans. It's paying homage here, homage there, but it's also smart enough to make that work. I really hate Easter eggs when the movie stinks, because then I'm thinking, well, hey, put the eggs aside and make a good movie. So it's not the case here. This is a lot of fun. Having said all that, it's also very dumb. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's silly in a way that doesn't really flatter the movie. And the plot just kind of goes from A to B to C just as an excuse to tell more jokes. And that's a shame, because I think given everything that's going on here, everything that's successful, you could have maybe had the structure of a good movie and then ladled all the jokes and all the exposition and all the wink, wink nods to the franchise on top of that. They didn't do that. So I think more traditional moviegoers may be aghast at what they see just for that reason alone. Now, there are zero spoilers here. There are many, many performances. You could call them cameos, but it's not just I'm on the screen for a minute and then I'm gone. They're actually integrated into the story, and that matters as well. What doesn't work about it? Well, I mentioned the plot for sure, but also there's so much death and destruction in this movie. I have to say, it's a little bit like watching a John Wick film where you just become numb to the chaos and the rage and the blood and the death and the destruction. And as much as I enjoy that and it is escapism, there's a little part of me that just feels like I'm dying inside. I'll be honest. But, I think we've been inured to that and you know what's coming. And also, when you think about superhero movies of late, one of the problems is the lack of stakes. It's a superhero movie. People die and they come back. We've seen that in science fiction. We've seen that in other projects and other remakes. And that happens a lot here in that Wolverine is technically indestructible. Deadpool is technically indestructible. And they fight against each other a lot. And they stab each other a lot. And you can see while this is going on that they're hurting each other and they're suffering, but they're just going to bounce back. So, it's almost like the conversations about, well, maybe we'll bring back Iron Man to the MCU. Yes, Tony Stark died in Avengers Endgame, but you can go to a different universe. There's always a million different ways you can bring a character back to life.
And I am Iron Man.
But wasn't that ending heroic? Wasn't that sacrifice so special? And to bring Iron Man back, which they may, we'll have to wait to see what happens next, feels like they'd be going back on that. They'd be kind of reducing that memory and that image we had of him fighting his last fight and saving the world. So that's a problem here as well. You've got two heroes who really seemingly can't die, who can't kill each other, and yet they're trying to kill each other. And will it be as big as everyone says? I think so. I think the word of mouth will be massive. And I also think just that we need to laugh. We need joy in our lives. The news cycle is just so horrendous. Presidents stepping down, former presidents getting shot at. It's going to only get meaner and nastier from here. We want to just smile. We want to escape the humdrum lives and the headlines. So yes, Deadpool and Wolverine will be a massive hit. Yes, it's worth your time. If you didn't like the last two Deadpools, then stay far, far away. This is not for you. And just know there's bloodshed aplenty. There's violence, unlike you've seen. But also, you're just going to smile and smile a lot. And just one final note. The MCU has been in trouble for some time. The movies have been lackluster, and I'm being kind. This movie acknowledges that, says it out loud, and it really does feel like a palate cleanser. If Disney and MCU, which is essentially one and the same, if they really want to revive the brand, if they want to bring it back to its greatness, this is the moment to make it happen. This is the starting point. Now, we want more serious, sober superhero films from now on. I don't think you can keep going in this direction. This is a very specific franchise with a very specific comic mindset. But if you want to bring things back, if you want to restore the MCU to its greater past, this is step one. So we'll see what happens next. If they continue going woke, if they continue hiring people for reasons beyond extreme talent, then I think they'll lose this opportunity. But I have a feeling they may take this moment and say, hey, we've done wrong. It's time to fix things. If there's a chance, I think Deadpool and Wolverine set that in motion. Well, that's it for the show this week. Thank you again to Radio America for having me as part of their great podcast lineup. They've been such a great support team. Can't thank them enough. And also, again, check out HollywoodInToto.com. It is my website. This is its 10-year anniversary. The website, like this show, is the right take on entertainment. No woke. We love free speech. And we love artists too. Listen, they can be liberal. They can be conservative. You're making great product. If you're entertaining us, if you're enlightening us, we're going to rally around you and support you, okay? Politics is important. We're a right-leaning show. There's no hiding that. But you know what? At the end of the day, a great movie is a great movie, and we celebrate that here. So have a great week. I will see you soon. No guest this week, by the way. We're looking to have Derek Richards, a very funny comedian, on as soon as possible. More guests are coming your way, but just decided to fly solo this week. Lots of stuff in the news, and I will see you next time.